It's Monday, December 7th, and this is a special meeting of the Legislation and Administrative Committee for the purposes of interviewing applicants for several different boards. And this morning, we're going to start with Marvin Radke, who's applied for planning and is currently incumbent there. Mr. Radke?
Morning, Commissioner.
Morning.
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 Before we get started, I'll just cover some ground rules. This committee here merely makes a recommendation to the full board for the appointment. So our recommendation is not final and binding. The meeting at the end of the month is when the full commission meets. They're the ones that make the decision. We'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have or make any statements you may have at the end of the interview. Okay? And this is very informal, so. You want to start, Mike?
Sure. Sure, thanks, Larry. Mr. Radke, what have been your experiences and/or education in planning and zoning?
I've been planning and zoning administrator since 1992. I've worked for several communities in Northwest Lower Michigan as administrator, enforcement officer of the ordinances. I'm currently a township trustee in Green Lake. I've been in county planning for about 10 years now. And I take my positions and my jobs and my committees seriously. I believe I've missed maybe a handful, maybe 6 meetings in 10 years that I've been on the county planning, if memory serves me correctly. A couple of them were not avoidable, but I believe I have a decent outlook on the planning aspect and also a unique perspective with regards to ordinances, creating ordinances to accomplish the vision of a plan, be it a county plan, township plan, park and rec plan, something of that nature.
Okay,
Beth?
thank you.
Hi, Mark.
Good morning, Commissioner.
As in many counties in Michigan, each local unit of government in Grand Traverse County has its own land use plan and zoning ordinances. What do you feel is the role of County Planning Commission specifically in relation with the local units of government in the county?
I can give you a short answer or a long answer on that, and I'll try to make it the short answer. I believe the role of county planning is to facilitate communication between municipalities, be it a township, city, village, and to take action or a recommendation to ensure that there's no incompatible uses to the adjoining communities, to try to get them to work together, and to be a resource, because as you know, with the fundings and all that, a lot of communities are unable to plan adequately just because of the lack of funds, and with county planning, it should be a resource for those communities, not to have the county do their plan, but to have resources available so it can be done at the local level.
Okay. Can I ask a follow-up question to
Sure.
that? What's an example or two of something that, with respect to that county planning does really well, and an example or two where we could maybe improve?
An example, I can give you a first-hand example with Kingsley and Paradise. I'm not sure if commissioners are aware, but back in the mid-90s, there was some animosity, as there is with some other communities, but the animosities were very strong there, and it was a planning war, turf war, I mean, as far as a dirt war, annexations, et cetera, et cetera. But county planning was, with the guidance of John Syke, planning director, was able to bring the two communities together on a joint adventure that they both agreed on, trails, non-motorized trails. And John was able to, or county planning, with John's guidance, I should say, was able to facilitate open lines of communication, putting all the animosities aside and then focusing on the good that can be accomplished. I believe that's what county planning has done in a good way. I believe the couple improvements that could be made, which we're currently working on, is just broadening our communication to be heard. We communicate, but some of the communities here don't listen. I mean, they listen, but it goes in one side and out the other. And county planning has to take a proactive step to not be a big brother, but just to say, hey, we're partners. Let's move forward with this, and this is what we can bring to the table. This is what you have. We can get it done. I mean, we try the communication, but it's just trying to find a hole in the
Effective
wall.
way, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And that's an ongoing issue. That's with all committees and all boards.
Sure, thank you.
Marv, should the county maintain a development plan, and if so, what should the plan consist of?
Development plan, yes, absolutely. It should consist of short-term, mid-term, and long-term development plans, as only for a tool for the Board of Commissioners. If we can maintain both short, mid, and long-term development plans, the county would be able to utilize the vision that has been created that would go along with the county plan, and it would also go along with the community's plans, individual community plan, and I believe it'd go a lot smoother. And some of these improvements that are, or the development plans as they come along, wouldn't hit as many potholes in the road, so to speak.
Thank you.
Can I ask John a
Sure.
clarification on that question? John, is it still my understanding the county from time to time goes out and does a master plan for the county? I know that we did the grand vision, I guess, is the way to, to replace what we would have ended up doing anyways over a number of years. But don't we basically put together a county master development plan, and it's a consolidation or a merging of all the development plans within the townships? I mean, I just want to understand this question and what we're trying to get at.
Yeah, the county does have a current comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2002. The grand vision doesn't replace that, but as Mara was talking, we're kind of looking at how the next plan is going to be developed in accordance with that vision and everything, because we're recognizing that the grand vision is an important, plays an important role in the whole region, and current comprehensive plan is probably going to have to be updated soon here, and we're trying to figure out what is the best form that it takes, but certainly the county's plan will be updated soon.
Is that more of a consolidation of all the township plans merged into one?
I think it was traditionally.
Yeah.
I don't know, we're trying to think out of the box for the next plan. I think
All right.
we're trying to look a little bit beyond the traditional approach and to see something that'd be innovative that works for everybody.
All right, well, I just wanted to
John,
get
would
that.
you state your name and
Oh, I'm sorry.
position, please?
John Syke, Grand Traverse County Planning Director.
Thank you, John.
I was just trying to get at what we're trying to get at with this question, so in terms of what we're actually doing. All right, thanks. Would you be willing to attend training sessions as a planning commissioner?
Absolutely, and I believe they should be mandatory.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike?
And the Planning Commission meets on the third Tuesday of each month at 2:30 p.m. Will you be able to regularly attend Planning Commission meetings?
Absolutely.
Already do.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes. Beth?
Obviously, you're familiar with the Open Meetings Act and FOIA and all of those things, good. And you would be able to attend a seminar on those if we offer them through the county?
Absolutely.
Because we're looking at doing that next year, I believe, January or February or something. And so the other thing I just wanted to mention is Marv's been the chair on the Planning Commission for a while, but since I've been there in January, and he's done an excellent job. I really appreciated being on the board with him. I knew him a little bit before when I was at the township, just recognized him and his name and so forth, and I've enjoyed being on that board with him. I think he's done a good job.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, do you have any
I'm all set, thank you.
All set? Thanks for coming this morning.
Thanks for
Mark.
coming in, Marv.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners. Have a great day.
You too.
Chris Kramer will be in contact with you, Marv, as to the results when they're all set.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, our next applicant, the second applicant, was unconfirmed and apparently isn't going to be able to make it this morning. We have one due at 8:20, so we'll have a little break here.
Okay.
We'll just recess for roughly 5 minutes.
Okay.
All set?
He's ready.
Leslie? I'd like to have you come up, sit down here if you would, please.
Morning.
Morning. Would you state your name and the board that you're applying for, please?
Leslie Sichterman for County Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. I presume you're an incumbent, so you've been through this process before?
Yes, once before.
Okay. We're going to ask you roughly 5 questions and maybe some extra questions. And this is an informal process, and then at the end of the interview, we'll give you the opportunity to ask any questions you have or make any statements that you wish. The results of this committee is a recommendation to the full board, which will meet at the end of December, and they're the ones that formally make the appointment to the position. Okay?
Okay.
And we'll start with Mike down here.
Good morning, Leslie. What have been your experiences and/or education in planning and zoning?
Well, it happens to be my vocation, so
Okay.
I studied planning at the graduate level at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And since then, spent about 5 years working for a consulting firm in the Detroit area and doing community planning for various townships and municipalities and others, mostly in the southeast Michigan area, and then moved here about 10 years ago and have been, the last 2 years, I've been the planner for Long Lake Township. For the past about 8 years, I've been the planner for Green Lake Township, both part-time, and also worked for Gordy Frazier and was a consulting planner for about 7 years there, working with different communities in the area. So I've got a long, long history of being involved with planning.
Thank you.
Hi, Leslie. As in many counties in Michigan, each local unit of government in Grand Traverse County has its own land use plan and zoning ordinance. What do you feel is the role of the County Planning Commission, specifically in relation to the local units of government in the county?
Well, you know, having usually worked on the other side of things and knowing how some of the townships really, you know, take exception sometimes to the recommendations of the county or, you know, are a little suspicious about what their agenda is, I think, you know, I'm more sensitive to the kind of reaction that the county should be giving in order to make it clear to the locals that it's really a advisory sort of role, and it's something to help make sure that all of the different groups are working together, that there's shared information, that to be a resource for the locals as opposed to handing down requirements and dictums. So I think that kind of approach with the local groups helps to open up lines of communication and make it easier for everybody.
Good, thank you.
Do you have any additional questions?
No, I had asked Marv about, you know, some examples where the county planning has done that, you know, well, you know, worked with the local units of government and where we needed to improve. But I might just ask you for an example of how county planning is working as that resource role right now, because I know we're doing a couple different things, and other commissioners might like to hear, you know, an example of that.
Well, you know, I think a really good one is when there are changes in the law. I always look to the county and the county planner to find out, you know, how this county is going to be working with this change in the law. You know, every change in the law that affects planning can be interpreted many different ways, and sometimes you really just need to wait for the dust to settle and figure out what this particular county, what their approach is going to be. And I think, you know, usually we all take little baby steps and, you know, check with each other and make sure that we're approaching it in a way that we can all defend. And I think that's a really good role for the county, and that's come up recently, like with the requirement to reappoint our planning commissions under an ordinance as opposed to how they were previously approved by resolution. And that's always a good resource, and I think a good role for county planning.
Thank you.
Leslie, should the county maintain a development plan? And if so, what should the plan consist of?
By development plan, I assume you're talking about like a master plan?
Right.
I do think that the county should have a master plan. I think regional planning is taking on more importance throughout the country. I think some of the smart growth kinds of initiatives that have been discussed all over work well when there's a regional plan behind them. There's still a role for the locals, but I think a regional approach is the best way to figure out how you're going to do the things, for instance, like the Grand Vision advocates, having small village centers throughout the region. That's a hard thing to plan in a vacuum for each community. Doing it from a regional approach makes a lot of sense, and I think this county and most counties should be taking on that role.
Thank you.
Morning.
Hi there.
Would you be willing to attend training sessions as a planning commissioner?
Absolutely. I do it, usually not as a planning commissioner, but in the last year or so, I have been taking a lot of additional training, in part because I've been involved with the Michigan chapter of the Congress for New Urbanism. And as part of that, a big part of the initiative of this group is to provide training opportunities. So I've done the form-based code training and have been taking other extra training and conferences that I normally don't go to. So it's been, I think, every point in your career, it's a good thing to do, and I'm happy to continue with that.
Okay.
The Planning Commission meets on the third Tuesday of each month at 2:30 p.m. Will you be able to regularly attend Planning Commission meetings?
Yep, it's been working out okay. In fact, Long Lake Township's Planning Commission normally met on the same day, and it got a little hairy there for a while, and so they did agree to move their meetings to make it a little bit easier for me, which was really nice.
Okay.
Do any of the commissioners have any further questions? Do you have any questions or statements you'd like to ask of us?
Not really. I just would like to say again that I really enjoyed my time on serving on the Planning Commission. I think it's been an eye-opener, and it's been kind of fun to sit on the other side of the desk. And I'd like to continue on if you're so inclined. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie has been on the planning commission. I've been there the whole time I've been there, and as you can see, probably two very strong board members are up for reappointment. And obviously, from her interview, you can see she brings a lot of relevant discussion to the topics. Always adds a lot to the conversation.
Let's see. Jim, would you mind if we interviewed you now, because the next person we have scheduled isn't going to be here this morning?
I'm ready, the pleasure of committee.
Okay, if you'd come up to the table, please, and introduce yourself and state what board you're running for. And this is,
Commission on Aging.
Jim Pasco, Commission on Aging.
Good morning.
Morning,
Name is
Jim.
Jim Pasco. I live in Blair Township, and I currently serve on the Commission on Aging Board of Directors, and I'm asking for reappointment.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Jim, describe your specific interest in senior citizens.
Basically, I am one. My wife is one. I'm not trying to be facetious, but life has been pretty good to me. I'm a retired CFO, and to the extent that I've had the opportunity, I've taken that opportunity to serve on a few county boards. I enjoy the work. I think it's part of my responsibility to give back, because I can't take it with me. Seriously, I might as well do what I can with my knowledge, which is a financial background, to participate in Grand Traverse County. I think it's 18 or 19%, don't hold me to the exact number, about 18 or 19% of the population of Grand Traverse County are seniors, and it's expected to grow, because Grand Traverse County seems to be a great destination for retirees. I've served for 3 years on that board. The county board has appointed me to be on the Area Agency on Aging Board of Directors. I serve on the Finance Committee of the Commission on Aging. I am on the Finance Committee of the Area Agency on Aging Board of Directors, recently appointed to that. And I have been elected, of course, subject to my remaining on the board, to be Vice Chair of the Commission on Aging for the next year. And I enjoy it. I've got the time to do it. That's the most important thing. And I'd welcome the opportunity to continue to serve.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Jim. Are you able to attend monthly board and committee meetings the first Tuesday and one other meeting the third week of the month?
I'm able to attend all the meetings as scheduled, and I make time if, in case a meeting has to be rescheduled at a different date or what have you.
Okay. You mentioned you were on the Commission on Aging, and you mentioned the Area Agency on Aging.
Yes.
And then you're on the Planning Commission.
I'm on the Planning Commission,
Okay,
and I'm
and-
also on the Community Corrections Advisory Board.
Community Corrections Advisory, okay. Thank you.
Jim, how can you benefit the Grand Traverse Commission on Aging and the senior citizens of Grand Traverse County?
One, by my 3 years of experience going forward. Secondly, in this particular economic set of circumstances we find ourselves in, I believe my financial background can be very, very helpful, because we have to face the unwelcome prospect at times that the money isn't always going to be there to do what we want to do, and we have to make a really refined and useful use of those resources we have. Because the importance of the Commission on Aging to the seniors of Grand Traverse County is, in my opinion, very essential, and the more strength you have with people with financial background, especially at this point in history, is positive for the Commission on Aging.
Thank you.
What specific skills and education would you bring to the Grand Traverse County and Commission on Aging Board?
Well, part of it is that, as I said, I am a senior, my wife is a senior. We both basically view involvement in the community important, and just as important to everything else, I have my wife's wholehearted support. I'm sorry, I could use a little bit wet there, but it's not. She supports my activities. Without that support, it really wouldn't mean a whole lot, because you can't really serve in a capacity like this where you might have 2, 3, 4 meetings a month without the support of your spouse.
Thank you. Do any of the board members have any further questions?
Jim, you'd be willing to attend any Open Meetings Act or FOIA workshops that the county has, correct?
Any that the county feels are appropriate, I'll make time for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry, did I answer your
We're all
question?
set. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the
coming this
Do you
opportunity.
have any questions or statements you'd like to say to us, Jim?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to continuing to serve, of course, at the pleasure of the commission.
And you're presently on the board now.
I am presently on the board now.
Chris Kramer This committee will make a recommendation to the full board, which will meet the end of this month, and then Chris Kramer will be in contact with you as to the results.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, let's see. Kelly Hall, are you present? Kelly Hall?
We do Nancy Reed?
She's not going to make it this morning.
Oh, okay, all right.
You can see if Martha's here. Martha Zan? We'll just,
That's fine. So you said Nancy Reed, she won't be here, and she had a previous interview, too?
right,
Okay.
yeah, she's...
Okay.
Good morning. Would you state your name and the board that you're applying for, please?
I am Martha Zahn. I live in Interlaken, and I am here for the Commission on Aging.
Okay, thank you. We're going to ask you some questions this morning. It's an informal process. Then we'll give you the opportunity to ask any questions you have or make any statements that you wish to give to this committee. And perhaps you heard from the earlier interview, this board will make a recommendation to the full board, and Chris Kramer there will be in touch with you at the end of the month as to the results of the Board of Commissioners' direction.
All set?
Mike? Yep.
Good morning, Martha. Could you please describe your specific interest in senior citizens?
I am one. I saw the article in the paper, about a year ago, stating that they were looking for someone in the south part of the county, and I thought this is something I can do, and so I applied at that time.
Thank you.
Hi, are you able to attend monthly board and committee meetings? They're the first Tuesday and one other meeting the third week of the month.
Yes.
And regularly throughout the year, you don't go away for 4 months?
No.
Or okay, thank you.
I travel 2 times a year, but I don't go for extended period of time.
Sure, thank you.
How can you benefit the Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging and the senior citizens of Grand Traverse County?
I have lived in the area. I am familiar with the Green Lake area. I don't know a lot about the Commission on Aging. I did attend one meeting in October, so from the little bit that I gained there.
Okay, thank you.
What specific skills or education would you bring to the Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging?
I am currently a very active volunteer at the Interlaken Center for the Arts. I spend an average of 3 mornings there a week now. I have been on other boards, but not recently. I was widowed 3.5 years ago, and now I am expanding back out again.
Okay.
Does anyone have any further questions of Martha? Larry?
No.
All set? Do you have any questions or statements that you'd like to address with us?
Not really. My name has been, like I said, I applied a little over a year ago, and each time my name has come up, they've called me when I've been traveling, and so this is why this is the first time now an interview has been set up for me, that it has just happened to work out that way, that I haven't been before you before this time.
Okay, well, thank you for coming in this morning, and Chris Kramer will be with you after the board meeting at the end of the month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Kelly Hall?
Hi,
Good morning.
good morning.
Would you give your name and the board that you're applying for, please?
Yes, my name is Kelly M. Hall, and I'm applying for the Grand Traverse County Planning Commission as a member of the Traverse City Area Public Schools Board of Education.
Okay, thank you. This committee here is going to ask you some questions, and then we'll make a recommendation later on to the full board, and the board is the one that actually makes the appointment, and the meeting will be the end of this month. And Chris Kramer, seated on your left there, will be in contact with you after the board meeting to tell you the results of the board's actions. Okay?
Yes.
And we'll start with Mike down here on the end.
Morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
What have been your experiences and/or education in planning and zoning?
I'll be honest, I don't have a background in planning or zoning.
Okay.
The reason why I applied is because I received a letter that was addressed to Mr. Tank indicating that the previous member of the Board of Education that had served on this, Mr. Barr, had not run and is therefore can't represent the Board of Education. And it's something I've been interested in for a long time. I follow it in the paper, and as a resident of the county, I have a vested interest, but I'm not a planning expert at this point in my life.
For those of you who may not be aware, there's a requirement now that there be a school board member as part of the planning commission.
So I'm going to tweak my next question a little bit
Okay.
for you because of the difference in the position on that board. The question before talked about how in Michigan, each local unit of government, your townships, cities, and villages have their own, planning commission. Yet there's a county planning commission, and, what's the role between those and how do they interface? Because the real control for the ordinances and so forth really is at the local level, and the county planning is more an advisory board, a resource board, and so forth. But, so the question I would like to ask you is, how do you feel your role, what do you expect to bring to county planning with your role on the Board of Education?
Well, the Board of Education, as you know, TCAPS owns a tremendous amount of property within the county, and we're also the largest public school system in the county, and we cover all of the townships within the county. So I think that I would offer a holistic view with respect to the townships and city within the county, as well as offering the viewpoint of the largest public school system in Grand Traverse County.
Thank you.
Do you think the county should maintain a development plan or a master plan? And what should the plan consist of, if you have any idea at all?
I believe it should maintain a master plan because at the county level, the county can take a more broad-based and holistic approach, and even if it is an advisory position and not enforceable at the lower township levels, rather than taking a narrow view that a township might, the county can at least offer perhaps a longer-term vision and advise the townships appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you be willing to attend training sessions as a planning commissioner?
Absolutely.
The Planning Commission meets on the third Tuesday of each month at 2:30 p.m. Will you be able to regularly attend Planning Commission meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I did forget my earlier follow-up question.
Yeah,
so
go
I was
ahead.
going to ask now, but you're familiar with the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act?
Very.
Would you be willing to attend a workshop if it were put on by the county for board members that we appoint?
I would love to.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions or statements of us, Kelly?
Not at this point.
Okay. That'll conclude the interview then. We appreciate you coming in. like I stated earlier, Chris will be in touch with you at the
Okay.
end of the month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and
Thank
we
you.
appreciate you coming in.
Congratulations on your recent
Thank you.
election.
Okay.
Jim, make-
Mary Andrews?
Morning.
Oops, wait a moment.
Hey, James.
Well, that's fine. Are you Mr. McGee?
Yes, he is.
I jumped over. That's okay. Is it? All right.
Ladies first, right?
That's exactly right.
Good decision. Would you state your name and the board you're running for, Mary?
Mary Andrews, the Commission on Aging.
Okay. And we have a series of questions we're going to ask you this morning.
Sure.
And perhaps you heard earlier that we make a recommendation to the full board. And then Chris Kramer, seated on your left there, will be in touch with you at the end of the month.
Yes.
And Mike?
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Please describe your specific interest in senior citizens.
Well, through my profession, I've dealt with a lot of seniors, and I've come to understand their concerns and their issues, and I felt that I could be a valuable asset to the Commission on Aging. Most of our board members are seniors and have a certain perspective because they're dealing with things day to day. But from an outsider's point of view, I think I can bring quite a bit to the table in a more objective manner.
Thank you.
Mary, you've mentioned your profession, and I didn't see it back in here. What is your what background?
I'm a
profession?
trust officer at Huntington National Bank, primarily dealing with senior clients.
Okay, very good, thank you. Are you able to attend the monthly board and committee meetings the first Tuesday and one other meeting the third week of the month?
Yes, I am.
Do you currently serve as chair? Is that did
Yes, I am
understand that correctly?
this
Okay.
year.
Thank you.
How does your presence benefit the Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging and the senior citizens of the county
How does my presence
on the board?
at the board? Well, I try to be a negotiator. Sometimes our meetings get kind of heated. Again, topics are quite emotional. So I try to keep things balanced and moving along and try to make the best decisions we can for the seniors of this county.
Okay, thank you.
Morning.
Hi.
What specific skills and education would you bring to the Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging Board?
I guess I would have to say listening. As a chair, everyone has quite a few different opinions, both pro and con on a lot of controversial topics. We just had a special board meeting last week that was quite lively and heated, I guess you could say. So I guess trying to keep things calm and moving along and making some good decisions and hard decisions for the betterment of the seniors.
Any other
Oh,
questions?
would you be willing to attend an Open Meetings Act or Freedom of Information Act workshop put on by the county?
Most definitely.
Thank you.
Mike, do you have any further?
No, thank you.
Larry?
Nope. Set.
Do you have any questions or statements of us?
I guess at our last meeting, it was suggested to me that perhaps maybe through we would be able to have maybe someone come in and give us a refresher course on the rules of meetings and motions and the correct procedure for that. Things got a little bit hairy last week. And so that was a suggestion, and I concur that would probably be quite helpful for us.
We can
Robert's
maybe-
rules,
we can even
someone
give
who
you a
can come in
gavel.
and do that. Oh, I have a gavel, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Chris, would you please make a note of that, and
I
next...
will. And
Yeah,
I
I'll
think
speak
that
with Georgia, and
Yeah, in January, I think, don't we have like a...
The Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information, but I think that's a little beyond
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
this is
that.
specifically
But, you know,
Robert's rules.
This is a good suggestion, because I think that it's important to do that, OMA and FOIA, because each of these board members that we appoint, they're not necessarily as ingrained in that. They want to adhere to it if they realize it, but sometimes, you know, it's a citizen and they're appointed to a board, and I don't know if it's brought to their attention.
well, it's in
So I
our
think it's a
manual when we
good
first
idea.
become a member.
Sure.
But it's just in words and reading. If you
Yeah.
have
someone presenting, it
presentation,
tends to
yeah.
sink in a little bit better.
But, that's another area that would be good to have something with, and it'd be nice to have it on a rotation so that we regularly have it as a refresher or for new members.
Anything else?
Nope. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming in, and like I stated earlier, Chris will be in contact with you at the end of the month.
All right, super.
Thanks,
And
Mary.
you're an incumbent, correct?
Yes, for 2010. I'm also the treasurer on the millage,
Okay.
so we want your full support.
Yeah. Jim McGee?
That's me.
Morning, Jim.
Morning.
Sorry for the confusion there, Jim, and I
Let me
appreciate,
add something to the things that Mary was talking about. First of all, she does a great job conducting meetings, and they are timely, which is always an issue with leadership at meetings. Secondly, I teach parliamentary procedure for Toastmasters in this area, and so I served more likely as a parliamentarian in the group. I don't know that everybody in the room has to know parliamentary procedure, but somebody needs to know it. And more importantly, the chair, or whoever's conducting the meeting, should certainly have knowledge of parliamentary procedure. But I kind of served in that role last week, whether I wanted to or not, but nevertheless, it got handled and it was fine. So anyway, that's all I had to say on that subject.
well, thank you, and I appreciate your patience by waiting a turn. And would you please state your name and the board you're running for, please?
Okay, Jim McGee, and for the Commission on Aging Board.
Okay, and did you hear me previously state that this committee makes a recommendation to the full board, and the full board at the end of the month?
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Okay, and then Chris Kramer there on your left will be in touch with you at the end of the month.
That's fine.
And you're presently an incumbent and you wish to be reappointed.
Right.
Got to have somebody with parliamentary.
There you go.
Okay, and we'll start with Mike.
Okay, good morning, Jim.
Morning, Mike.
Please describe your specific interest in senior citizens.
Well, first of all, I am one, so that
Believe
leaves
it or
me
not.
interested. And, quite frankly, I had both my mother and my mother-in-law here, and this town does have a way of providing great services to seniors in the community, and as far as I'm concerned, the Commission on Aging is an extension of that. I know firsthand that a lot of seniors want to stay in their homes. They don't want to be institutionalized, if you will. From my perspective as treasurer of the board this year, I have to tell you that I would say that the county is getting more than their money's worth out of this program. Many times more, as probably it should be, given the nature of it. Because if we have to put these people in some kind of assisted living facilities or nursing homes where they can't stay there only because there's certain services that they need that they can't get, that they could have gotten from someone like the Commission on Aging, I think it's a real plus for the county and certainly for the citizens of the community. So that's really the bottom line reason. As a business person, I have a genuine interest in making certain that we have, we're concerned about the fiduciary elements of these kinds of programs, and that in fact we're getting our money's worth, and quite frankly, I'm solidly convinced that we are.
Thank you.
Just wanted to ask you, I'm looking at your sheet from Larry about interest in reappointment. I think there's an error here because it says you will be 70 in December.
Oh, you're so nice.
You don't look 70. You do not look 70, sir.
You're so nice.
Are you able to attend the monthly board and committee meetings, the first Tuesday of the month and one other meeting the third week of the month?
Been doing it for the last year and a half, 2 years, so
Thank you.
I see no reason for it not to work.
And how can you benefit the Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging and the senior citizens of the county by being a member on the board?
Well, some of that I explained in my earlier remarks, but with my finance background, I think that certainly doesn't hurt. We have some great people on the board, I have to tell you. They're really solid folks, and it's a broad base of interest and backgrounds, all solidly interested in the welfare of the people in the community, so it's a pleasure for me to be a part of that. I would say my financial and business background probably contributes as much as anything to the well-being of the organization.
Thank you.
Morning, Jim.
Morning, Larry.
What specific skills and education would you bring to the Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging Board?
Well, as I said, academically, I have a degree in finance, and I spent 20 years on finance staff at Ford Motor Company World Headquarters. I run my own business, so I have a marketing background as well now. And I have served on any number of programs in the county, not the least of which was the Senior Companion Program. I served on that board for a number of years. I also was the chairman of that board for a couple of years and served on the United Way. All programs that have impact on the community and certainly serve not only seniors but others, but the Senior Companion Program obviously was senior related. And so I think I bring some of those things to the table as well.
Do you have any, is there anybody else that has questions for
I
Jim?
have two questions for
Okay,
you. One
sure.
about the Open Meetings Act and FOIA, and you'd be available to attend any workshop put on by the county.
Yeah, in fact, we have already had one of those
Okay.
just recently,
Okay.
within the last, I don't know, Georgia, help me out here.
Probably 2 years.
Okay.
Okay, good.
The last one the county put on.
Okay, yeah. Also, I did forget to ask Mary Andrews this, but Jim Pasco mentioned it in his interview, and so did Martha Zahn. Do you serve on any other county boards currently? Okay.
No.
Do you have any questions or statements you'd like to make to us?
Only that I have to tell you that Georgia does a great job as the director of this organization. She's got a group of folks that work with her that are clearly dedicated to their job, and we hear nothing but positives from them. So, and that's important, I'm sure, for you, not to hear complaints.
Right. Well, thank you for coming in. We appreciate your time, and like I stated earlier, Chris will be in contact with you at the end of the month.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
Okay. Let's see, Rodetta's outside there. Yeah, she can. Good morning, Rodetta.
Good morning.
We're running a little ahead of schedule, so if you don't mind.
That's great, thank you.
And would you, after you get comfortable and get your coat and stuff off, if you wish, would you state your name and the board you're running for, please?
Rodetta Heron, Commission on Aging.
Okay, thank you. We're going to just ask a series of questions this morning, and this board makes a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, which meets at the end of the month, and the final decision is the board's. And then Chris Kramer, who's seated on your left, will be in contact with you at the end of the month to tell you what the results were. And presently, you're an incumbent, and you're reapplying to stay on the board?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Yep.
Good morning, Rodetta.
Good morning.
Could you please describe your specific interest in senior citizens?
My specific interest started years ago, probably as a little girl. I went into nursing, have worked with geriatric residents for years at the hospital, really have cared about seeing them not be in the hospital. There's so many alternatives as to what we can do. I've seen people come in and they saved all their life and it's all gone. They have nothing. And they have a little closet, actually about a foot or a half wide, and that's it. That's their life. And they share a bathroom, which is a very personal aspect of their life. Well, it's harder for them to get around. They have to use walkers and different things to get in and out of the doorways. And I always feel that there's more. And over the years, 17 in fact, that I worked with the geriatric residents, their one request always, almost on a daily basis, if not more often, was that they wanted to remain in their home. And the Commission on Aging, that's what it's all about.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, Rodetta.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Are you able to attend the monthly board and committee meetings, the first Tuesday and one other meeting the third week of the month?
I believe I've been to all the meetings. yes.
Okay. Are you on any other county boards currently?
I'm on a Kingsley, actually, I was a candidate for the school board and was elected, but there seemed to be a lot of uneasiness on the board, and I decided that I really didn't want to get into a negative situation at that particular time. So then the superintendent notified me, asking me if I would serve on an advisory board to the school board, and so that I'm on.
Okay, thank you.
How can your presence benefit the citizens of Grand Traverse County and the Commission on Aging Board and the senior citizens of Grand Traverse County?
Well, I have a lot of new ideas. I'm not afraid to say what I think or disagree with others. But I also, at the same time, respect their opinion. I feel that the board, is really growing. We have so many baby boomers and all this people coming up, and we need to try to accommodate them, and that, in order to do that, we need new ideas, and we need new sense of direction. We had a very good meeting last week, very productive, and I think we're doing good, and I feel like I'm an important member of the team. At least I hope I am. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
What specific skills or education will you bring to the Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging Board?
Well, I believe I've been the owner of Hair and Auto Supply, part owner, owner and part owner. I'm divorced, but anyway, for almost 40 years. Have hair and nursing services, which I have nurses working in the homes. We're we don't take anything away from the Commission on Aging. We do more people that want to pay so much an hour they want a registered nurse at the bedside. They don't care how much it costs, type of thing. I've owned M113 Raceway, stock car racetrack, for several years, sold it a couple times. So I'm good at accounting, I'm good at purchasing, I'm good at shooting out new ideas. I had 50 employees for several years, and my nursing.
Okay, great, thanks.
Do you have any further questions, Bob?
No, thank you.
I just, you'd be willing to attend an Open Meetings Act or FOIA workshop?
Pardon me, Beth, I didn't...
You'd be willing to attend an Open Meetings Act or a Freedom of Information Act workshop put on by the county for appointees?
Sure.
Okay, great, thanks.
And Rodetta, you're presently the Community Relations Chair?
I am.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for coming in this morning. Do you have any questions or statements you'd like to say to us?
I just want to say that I really enjoy being a part of the Commission on Aging Board. I really believe in it. I just am proud to be a member of that board.
I don't know, the Community Relations Chair, what does that entail for you?
Well, this past year, it entailed, we were doing our publicity, and we interviewed 4 different groups, and we found that saving money is not always the goal, and that was kind of against what I've always done in business, but we went with our former person who did an excellent job. He also gave a lot of freebies. We had people applying that when we asked them what they knew about promoting, working with geriatric residents, they had no idea. They were in it more for the sales and the money, but they didn't have a feel of what was needed. So we made the decision to stay with our former person that was doing a good job, even though we could have saved a little bit of money going another direction, but we don't know. We wouldn't have got the same quality of work. We also go out in the community and really promote it. I mean, with different businesses and different things. We do a newsletter. We just do a lot of different, I'm not real sure if you want some specific,
No, that's
but
okay, that's okay, just general idea.
at every meeting, brainstorm and work with a lot of different ideas. I'm on the finance committee also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Odetta. We
Thank you.
appreciate you coming in this morning, and like I stated earlier, Chris will be in touch with you at the end of the month.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Let's see, what did I do? Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Herb, good morning. If you don't mind, we'll put you ahead. We're running a little ahead here. We've had some cancellations, and we'd like you to state your name and what board you're running for.
I'm Herb Lemkel, and I'm applying for the Beta Board, for the opening on that.
Okay, and I think you're probably familiar with this process.
I've been on the other side.
All right, and Chris will be in touch with you at the end of the month with the results, and we'll just ask you some questions here, and we'll start out with Mike.
Okay.
Morning, Herb.
Good morning, Mike.
Briefly, what is your interest in becoming a member of the Beta Committee?
Well, I sat on the Beta Board as the county commission representative for a number of years and got really involved with it. As part of the campaign to be able to provide a millage for the community, got involved with the people, and I really was probably one of the few that really looked at the contract agencies and how we're doing and what their needs are. And one of the things that I found is that transportation is their connection to the community. And without that transportation mode, they don't have hope. And when we take away hope, they become isolationist, and they're not able to get out in the community and be citizens of our community and be able to go to work and be able to use this for shopping and things. So, I found that a lot of the riders were just really wonderful, wonderful, caring people. And when you ride on the bus with them, you get to know them, and they're just, they're so thankful for the quality of service that Beta provides.
Thank you.
Hi, Herb, how are you?
Good morning, Beth. How are you?
Good. You've answered this a little bit, and there's a bit in our information as well, but what previous experience in serving on committee or in community activities will enhance your contribution to this board?
Well, I've been involved in transportation a lot, and one of the things that I continue to be on is the Chamber of Commerce Transportation Committee, and have got involved with the Grand Vision. And Grand Vision now has got a couple of different avenues of transportation, one of which is the public transportation, and I'm sitting on that committee also. And I sat through one of the focus groups that Beta had to talk about what the needs are for our community and how we're going to be able to do more connections and what we can do with it. So, I think that the Grand Vision and transportation and public transportation is going to be a critical piece. Where do we go for the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years? How do we make it look? How do we provide the needs of all the community, not just a few? So, my transportation background, I was part of the contact sensitive solutions for MDOT. So that really was one of those things that said, don't do a project until you go into the community. Ask the community, what is it that they want? What is it that they need before you start figuring out what you think you want to give them? And I sat on the Transportation Committee for MAC and for NACO. So I found out a lot of different needs about what transportation should be and how it should be funded. So, you know, that's kind of my background a little bit, even though I didn't have a background before that in transportation. But, you know, it's just made me a lot more aware of that we need to have quality funding. We need to have a quality transportation system to provide the services and hope for our community.
Okay, so you mentioned the Transportation Committee with the Chamber. What other county or other boards are you currently on right now?
I'm on the Community Living Center Board. I just got on that about 6 months ago. That's a transition housing organization here in town. I'm also on the Boy Scout Executive Board. I've been involved with the Cherry Festival. I'm not involved with that on the board anymore, but still involved with it. Let's see, SCORE, I'm a SCORE counselor. So through the Chamber, and, or not through the Chamber, we have a separate organization the Chamber supports. So I've been really involved with that and involved with a lot of investment clubs and helping people set up investment clubs.
Okay, good, thank you.
Herb, how many years were you on the Beta Board earlier?
I was trying to think. I think it's about 6, if I remember correctly. And it may have been 8, but I can't remember exactly.
Okay. Are you a year-round resident, and can you commit to attending monthly meetings and extra time for special committees or projects?
Not a problem at all. Yes, I am.
Thanks.
I guess before I read this question, I just want to let the committee know that with Herb's tenure on the county board, it was 10 years. Is it 10 years?
12.
12 years?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all sort of gravitate towards different areas of government, and then we kind of have a keen interest in certain areas, and Herb's was always the transportation area. Mm-hmm. And Herb was so heavily involved in just about everything that touched transportation. You know, for the amount of time that Herb was on the board, we really relied on him and his expertise, and when anything came up regarding transportation or anything that was connected to transportation, especially with his heavy involvement with MAC and NACO on the transportation side, we really relied on him heavily. And he did, as far as I'm concerned, did a wonderful job with the board, giving us that line of experience on the Board of Commissioners. So just wanted to give that to you. In your opinion, I think this just answers the question, in your opinion, what are the functions of this board and what strengths would you offer to build a balance of expertise on this board?
Well, I think anytime you sit on any board, your job is to look at policy, but also to look at what the needs in the community are to determine what's best for the community. So, you know, one of the things that I did about 2 weeks ago, I went down to the transfer station and just walked in. Of course, I know a lot of the people there, and so, you know, they were coming up to me and really concerned about the direction that Beta might be taking, and that they're, you know, feeling that they might be left out. So, you know, that's one of the things you do, is you go out into the community, you talk to people that are using the system. You know, the Beta Focus Group brought in a lot of people to be able to talk about what are the needs and what are the concerns about what Beta is going to be doing. So I think, you know, as a board member, you need to do that. You need to go out into the community. You need to be involved with a lot of different organizations. One of the things I forgot to mention, I'm also on the Grand Terrace Community Collaborative as the co-chair for 211. And 211 is just another opportunity for us to be able to provide a connection to the community. But I think, you know, one of the things that I thought was rather interesting that somebody brought up is that people are making a lot of phone calls to a lot of organizations trying to be able to get services. And if we can cut down those phone calls to the people, they can start to look at how to provide the services. You know, one of the organizations had to go out and put volunteers on just to be able to answer the phone calls that they were getting because it was interrupting the ability of their people to get the job done. And 211 will eliminate some of those phone calls and be able to give that connection. But going into the community is so critical to find out anytime you're on any kind of a board so that you can be involved and be aware of. But you also have to educate yourself. You have to go to you know, you talked about the Open Meetings Act and things like that. You have to be able to go and make sure that you are aware of what should be done in your community and keep yourself up to date. And I'm more than willing to do that. You know, when I get involved with an organization, I don't go there halfway. I go the whole way.
I think you've pretty much answered this next question, but how would you solicit views and opinions on topics being addressed by the board?
Yeah, I think just by going out in the community and, talking to the people, but, being involved with the chamber, you get another point of view, as to how the business community, and one of the things that they were talking about is we really don't have a really good connection for crossing the town on a regular basis. Going from the Grand Traverse Resort to Munson Hospital, and maybe where there ought to be a direct line back and forth just for that particular section, connecting the motels and connecting the hospital and connecting the resort, so that people can kind of get to the transfer station and then go both ways. So that was one of the things that came out of that, okay, how do we do that? Well, that's what you do, is you're getting into the community, listening to what the people have to say, but you got to get involved with the organizations that are there also. And so being a Rotarian also gives me that connection to the business community. So that's how I do it.
Okay. Thanks, Herb.
Anybody have any further questions of Herb? Herb, do you have any questions or statements?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be able to come before you, and hopefully that when you make your selection, that I will be one of those people that will be selected for it, because I think I've got the passion, I've got the desire, and I know that I can do the best job for our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Herb.
Thanks for coming in this morning, Herb. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Shirley Murray? Yes. We're ready if you are.
Thank you.
We'd like you to sit down and tell us your name and which board you're applying for.
Shirley Murray. The board I'm applying for is the Traverse District Area Library Board.
Okay. This committee here is going to ask you some questions. It's very informal. And then later on, we'll make a recommendation to the full Board of Commissioners, which at the end of the month is their regular meeting, and they'll make a decision there. And Chris Kramer, seated on your left, will be in touch with you at the end of the month to announce what the board's decision or appointments were. Okay?
Yes.
And we'll also give you the opportunity to ask us any questions or make any statements that you wish at the end of the interview, okay?
Okay.
And we'll start with Mike here.
Good morning, Shirley. Could you briefly indicate to us what your interest is in becoming a member of the Traverse Area District Library Committee?
Yes. May I ask, have you had an opportunity to look at my application?
Mm-hmm.
I've been a library advocate since I was 8 years old, and my career has been 30 years as a classroom teacher. I retired 17 years ago and have been very involved in the community insofar as the libraries are concerned. I'm a life member of the TADL and the Interlochen Friends organization, and I've started 3 book discussion groups in the area for the newcomers for the library, and also I teach the Books on the Boardman class at the college. I'm just very, very involved with books and with libraries. Last May or June, I won the award for Best Friend or Trustee of all libraries in Michigan, 50,000 population and under. And I guess if times had been different when I went to college in the 50s, I probably would have been a library personnel myself. But I enjoyed my role in the classroom and used libraries extensively. As a single mother of 3 daughters, the library was on our list every week. So much so that all 3 of my daughters have their master's degree in library science and technology. My oldest daughter is in charge of all the public programs in the United States for American Library Association. She's been working in Chicago almost 30 years.
and I've been happy to go to many national conventions with her and see the bigger picture. And my middle daughter is a librarian at a branch, a Seattle branch. My youngest daughter just got her PhD at the University of Mississippi, and she's in charge of all the teaching of library science at that university. So the input from my three daughters, who are very close to me, has been libraries, libraries, libraries. And I have been very interested in this particular library in Traverse City. I was on the grassroots committee to build the library, worked in public relations with David Hacker to speak to so many organizations over that 2-year period. My life was actually devoted to getting that library over there. Since then, I've been involved in many community activities, and I've always been interested in the board, and when I was on in the League of Women Voters for about 5 years, I was a library representative and went to all the board meetings. But I wasn't comfortable with the board in those days, and this is the first time that I've been extremely interested in the library with the selection of the new director, Netta Lansdale. I think she's just going to be fantastic, and I would really love to work on that board. I went to all the interviews for the directors and also to the discussion of the board members over who they should select. And I was frankly very, very impressed with the board. I mean, compared to 15 years ago, when I used to go to the meetings every time for the League of Women Voters. I've talked too much.
Oh, that's very good, thank you.
I don't think you've talked too much.
My husband was in charge of all international personnel for Chrysler for about 30 years. And so when I got out of the car this morning, I said, "Now, what's your best recommendation?" He said, "Look them in the eye." And I said, "Well, what happens if they start looking the other way?" So this was informal. So. He said, "Well, they never do that."
Well, congratulations on your library conference award. That's
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for your dedication to the grassroots committee. I enjoy the library. My children enjoy the library. What previous experience in serving on committees or in community activities will enhance your contribution to this board? And I think you've touched upon a lot of that.
Yes, I have. Right now, I have been, since its inception, on the board of the advisory committee for NMC. It used to be Senior Academy, now it's Life Academy. And I've been on that board since it started, and I've continuously taught classes there in the Life Academy. And so I have opportunity through that. I always teach at Campus Day, and I'm fairly well known over there, and people are inclined to come up to me because I do things like best winter reads to say, what should I read? And I think that I have an overall knowledge of the way libraries should be. And so that really informs everything that I do in the community. For example, at one of the Rotaries this spring, I gave a talk on literacy. And I talked to the head of literacy in Chicago for American Library Association. And through the research that I did for that, I realized that our library in Traverse City should be the place where other people who are doing literacy things could meet. Like the college does a program, Peninsula Library has a Spanish, English program, and also the one that's been here the longest. I guess it's called the literacy. Council. That's what it's called. Yes. So I felt at that time, it just occurred to me, the library should call these people so they're not, doing the same programs, so that they're all working together. But under past administration there, to make a suggestion like that would be wasting your time. And other things I do, I'm the president of the American Association of University Women. I'm very interested in, with my mother, a single child. She had 3 daughters, I have 3 daughters. I'm quite interested in gender issues. I'm interested in all the things that the League of Women Voters do. I'm on the board of Women's History Project at Grand Traverse Heritage Center. And that body and AUW and League of Women Voters do a lot of networking together, so we aren't repeating the same kind of programs. I think I'm fairly visible in the community. I volunteer at the State Theater with my AUW group several times a month. Do a great deal of volunteering at the, I sell books for the Interlaken area district of the Interlaken Public Library online. I've been selling them for about 10 years. I make about $10,000 a year for them. And that may have had something to do with my award. But I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's my record of doing so many things, book sales and friends groups and so forth in the community that has that earned me that award. Can't be all about money.
Very good, thank you.
Are you a year-round resident?
Yes, I am.
And can you commit to attending monthly meetings and additional time for special projects?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Morning. In your opinion, what are the functions of this board, and what strengths would you offer to build a balance of expertise on this board?
I didn't hear the last part, sorry.
And let me read it again. In your opinion, what are the functions of this board?
Yes.
And what strengths will you offer to build a balance of expertise on this board?
I guess that I hadn't attended meetings for a long time until I went to the interviews. But I see that group as they responded to Meta Lansdale, and I agree with that they're somebody not to make the decisions as much as to listen to her and evaluate the things that she wants to do. I believe that would be the function of that group. And as far as my particular expertise, I'm a woman, and the board is heavily loaded with men. And I just think that women are the caregivers and the people that take the kids to the libraries, and it's important to have that kind of balance. However, having said that, I think the board is perfect just as it is. It doesn't need me. Is there another part of that question I didn't answer?
That's fine.
Larry.
And how would you solicit views and opinions on topics being addressed by this board?
How would I solicit what?
Views and opinions on topics that are being addressed by the Tattle Board.
I'm, as you can see, fairly open, and I always listen to people. And after the 2 years I spent trying to get this library here, I was appalled when I came here 17 years ago at the library. Since libraries have been such a big part of my life, I spent so much time on that I did nothing else those 2 years. And as a result, many of the people, like in my church, still say to me, did you see what they're doing over at your library? It's just, and I have to think for a minute, because I'm at the very south end of Long Lake, and I spend probably more time at the Interlaken Library and pick all my books up, my interloans up there and everything. And but after the library millage passed, this was just, I was responsible for everything that was going wrong and everything that was going right. as far as the people I knew who had heard me speak. So I don't think that's changed that much today. I think I'm identified with the library. And I'd like to say also, I don't think I said to any of you, I may have said the very first thing, that I'm a library advocate. And that means that even though my closest library is the Interlochen Public Library, which is a very small, friendly, important library. Always has had a library, a person with a library degree there, which isn't true of all of our branches and member libraries. At the same time, I would love to have a library in Long Lake, and I would work for that. And if the time comes when it seems better to have just branch libraries, and the arguments for that are, I would not be prejudiced with many of the people in Interlochen who said, no, our library is so great. But you have to realize that the member libraries, for many years, were better in some ways than the Tattle Library because of the way they were run. And I'm just saying that not to criticize anybody, but they're friendlier, and that, of course, is due a lot to their size. But on the other hand, it's more than that. My oldest daughter, who has probably goes to 100 libraries every year in her work, says she can tell in 15 minutes in a library whether it's a good library or a great library. And that's just really something. I never go anywhere in this country or abroad that I don't visit the library, usually to get my email, but then while I'm there, I see what they're doing. And I've been to hundreds of libraries all over the country, and that's another expertise that I bring to this library.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Do you have any questions or statements you wish to make?
I had quite a little merry-go-round until I discovered how to get my name on the list. None of the library board members could tell me, and even when I called here, they said, well, that's the city commission. And I think some people don't realize that there are city appointments and county appointments. I knew that, but I just didn't know how to. And when I called your offices here, they said, well, you should have gotten your name, and there was a little article in the paper last August. Well, August in this area is, you don't read every little article, I guess. And also in August, I didn't know. I knew that the present director was leaving, but I didn't know who would be appointed. And so even if I had seen it then, which I didn't, I'm not sure that I would have done this. And I just would like you to tell me, what is the drill here? Will my name be on a list, and when my name comes up, or will I be compared to other people who would like to be on the board? Are the board people whose terms are up, are they likely to re-up?
Well, I can answer those questions for you. Two individuals that are up for renomination, incumbents, if you will, have both expressed an interest of staying on the board. We're also interviewing two more applicants, one being yourself. So what we have is 4 applicants running for 2 positions. And this committee here, the Legislation and Administrative Committee, we do all the interviews for all the applicants on the county boards. And we make a recommendation to the full Board of Commissioners, which at their meeting at the end of the month makes the final determination or the appointment. And then Chris Kramer, seated on your left there, will be in touch with you after that meeting to tell you what the results were. And Chris generally she is the person that handles all of the applications for the various boards, which we have a lot of them. In fact, today is a special committee meeting because we had so many applicants for so many different boards, and we interviewed last month, we're interviewing today, and we've got at least one more tomorrow. so.
Well, I just, you've answered my question about the two incumbents probably will stay on the board. What happens to me then? I mean, suppose they stay on the board and that's all right with all of you because you probably don't know that much about, I know there was, so is my name then just, do I stay on the list? or-
Well, do we keep an active list,
We
Chris?
keep applications for a minimum of a year, usually about a year. And if one of those two individuals were to, for some reason, leave the board and we had another opening, we would still contact you and see if you're interested, if you're still interested at that time. So, we do keep the applications on file for a period of time, but, within a year to 18 months or something, a lot of people have decided that they have different interests, or they may not, they have other things that they've decided to do. So at that time, we would advertise again.
But there's no age limit?
No, there's no age limit, and I think your reference to the incumbents, we have them come and do the interview also, and there's no guarantee because you're an incumbent that you're going to remain appointed.
I see.
The board, of course, doesn't have to take, the full board doesn't have to take the recommendation of this committee. Most often they do, but just because you're an incumbent don't mean you're going to stay there necessarily.
That's
Okay?
right, I'd like to echo that too. I mean, there may be some instances where the incumbent, has been an effective board member on that board, has interviewed, it's been a very good interview, relevant discussion, and so they may be reappointed, but they go through the same process as somebody new to that board, or new to applying for that board. So in some cases, it may be true they may be reappointed, in other cases, maybe not. And it may also not be because they're not effective, it may be for other reasons. They're on a multitude of other boards, and we'd like to expand, more people in the community being involved with the county and on different boards, and other reasons as well, so.
Thank you, Ben.
In regards to age, we had an applicant, I can't remember if it was in April or May, we interviewed for a board, and he was successful, and he was either 87 or 89, so.
Well, I've noticed since I turned 75 this year that each day I just feel one day older. I don't feel a year older. So I expect if you kept my name on the list until I was 85, I might still be interested.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you let Chris know, anytime there's a opening on the Tattle Board or any other committee you may be interested in, you could give her a call or stop and visit with her, and she'd be glad, I'm sure, to put a tickler in the file for you.
And Shirley, with all due respect to your husband, you can tell him you didn't need his advice. You did just fine, thank you.
I have interviewed you before, but I think it's probably been 25 or 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
for coming in.
Chairman?
Joe Lowe.
Yeah. Mr. Lowe?
Chairman, please. Could I?
Oops.
I was just going to mention that we had in our audience Meta Lansdale, who is the new director of Tattle. I was going to introduce you, but she got out ahead of time, so.
Okay.
She may be back tomorrow for the interview also.
Joe, we're pretty close to being on time, and your interview is scheduled for the Beta Board, and we'd like you to state your name and the board, please, that you're applying for.
My name is Joe Lowe. I'm an applicant for the Beta Board vacancy.
Thank you, and I think you've interviewed with us before.
I have.
Okay, so you're familiar with the proceedings, if you will?
Relatively, yes.
Okay, and then at the end of the interview, Joe, we'll give you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have or statements that you may wish to make, okay?
All right.
And we'll start with Mike here on the left.
Joe, what is your interest in becoming a member of the Beta Board?
My interest is, I think that residents of this community need and deserve a safe, comfortable, economical ride to where they need to go. A lot of people are unable to drive or don't have cars, and provides an essential service in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Joe.
Morning.
What previous experience in serving on committees or in community activities will enhance your contribution to this board?
I think my service on the Commission on Aging Board, I was on that, I believe it was an 8-year period. As you know, there are a lot of senior citizens who use the data services. And most that I've talked to think it's an essential service, and I'm sure it is for them. Other committees, other than service on township, first as supervisor and then as trustee. I think I'm in the 12th year or something like that service. And very educational to me when I first into local politics.
Oh, it's a learning experience.
Yes, every day.
What boards, I noticed on your application you had listed several boards. What are you currently on right now?
Currently? On the Blair Township Board as a trustee.
Okay.
If I'm in any other boards at current time, excuse me.
Thank you.
Fighting this cold.
So rural fire, the fire board, and that was previous member then?
Rural Fire Board, I was on the Rural Fire Board for several years. And the administrative board, that was, I don't think that's any longer in existence, but, and served in various capacities in those, on those boards.
I noticed the Cherry Capital Council. When were you on that?
I was on the Cherry Capital Cable Council when it was, so I think that's gone now. It's not me, I'm not putting these boards up. Yes, I was on that one also.
Yeah, good. Good.
Joe, are you a year-round resident?
I'm a year-round resident.
And you can attend monthly meetings, and you have time for additional time for special committees and projects?
I do, and I have no need or desire to go away in the winter. Don't mind the snow, I'm sorry.
Joe, I happen to sit on the Blair Board of Trustees with Joe when Joe was the supervisor and then as a trustee, and Joe is still currently a trustee, but Joe's motto at re-election time, his sign said, vote low, shoot high.
Oh, I love
Or aim high, I mean.
Aim high, vote
Yep.
low. I stole that, actually,
Did you?
from a younger brother.
And Joe has a background in economics, so his nickname on the Blair Board was the Bean Counter.
Interesting.
Well, thank you, Joe.
You were an accountant for CMH?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Larry?
Morning. In your opinion, what are the functions of this board and what strengths will you offer to build a balance of expertise on this board?
Well, I don't know what, I believe in balance on a board, obviously. And I don't know currently what the balance is, but my background, I have a strong accounting background, economics. I love to look at budgets. I think I've got fairly proficient at that. I have I'm retired Navy, so I have that background. Background in politics so far. I think politics teaches you more than anything that you can possibly learn anywhere else. Teaches you moderation, it teaches you judgment, it teaches you to keep your mouth shut until you know what you're talking about. I think those are beneficial on most boards. The board that takes it's got an identity of its own, and if the board members don't cooperate and sometimes even have to kind of swallow your thoughts and not say what needs to be said. I think it's important that the board has a certain unity there and that they work together and they respect one another's opinions, even though they wouldn't be mine opinions and my probably believe them to be wrong for the rest of my life. I still think that you You have to moderate your judgment.
How would you solicit views and opinions on topics being addressed by the Tattle Board?
How is it, I solicit, would you
Views and opinions on topics being addressed by the board?
give me an example?
I think I could help you
Okay.
out there, Mike. Joe has a tendency in the morning, and he makes it a habit, because this is how Joe collects his information, but, for example, he'll go to the Coffee Clutch down in Kingsley, South County, even though he's, affiliated politically in Blair, but he goes down there to see what the people are talking about and what's on the agenda, and Joe does that in several places in the community, so that's one way he gets a lot of information.
Yes, that's true. I'm very active in that area, not only because I want to solicit information on whatever subjects, but I like coffee. And that's people are not shy about expressing opinions in coffee shops. I'm sure you know that, but they're not shy about that. And I enjoy that give and take that goes on.
Okay.
Any other questions of Joe? Do you have any questions or statements you'd like to make to us, Joe?
No, I can't think of any questions I have. I appreciate your time. Please don't hesitate. Call if something comes up that, further questions comes up. I'm usually always available.
Okay, we'll make a recommendation sometime this month to the Board of Commissioners, and they'll make the decision, and Chris there will be in touch with you by the end of the month.
Okay.
All right? Thanks for coming in this morning,
Thanks, Joe.
We appreciate it. There's Mr. Lavka in the back here. It's 10 o'clock, too. We just brought up. Gary, we're all set for you, if you are. I'd like to have you sit down and announce your name and the board you're running for.
My name is Gary Lofka. I've lived in Grand Traverse County all my life.
Okay, and which board are you applying for?
County Parks and Recreation.
Okay. What we're going to do this morning, Gary, is this committee, the Legislation and Administration Committee, is going to ask you, I think we got 5 questions, and perhaps sometimes we'll have additional questions. But anyway, we're going to ask you some questions informally, and then at the end of our session, we'll give you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have or make any statements that you wish us to know. And this committee makes a recommendation to the full board for their meeting at the end of the month. And Chris Kramer sitting on your left there, Chris will be in touch with you after that meeting's held to tell you what the results of the commissioners' deliberations were. Okay?
Okay.
And we'll start with Mike.
Thank you. Gary, what type of involvement do you have, or have you had in the past, with Parks and Recreation departments and/or Parks and Recreation boards?
Well, I've been involved with American Legion Baseball since, probably 1980 in that area. I'm sorry, probably about 1976. And I was past commander of Legion posts for 3 years. I have been involved in putting on car shows up there years ago with Mr. Zagers and Mr. Schreiner. Recently, I don't belong to that group anymore, but quite involved with that. Never had any major problems up there, even back when the city still had it. I get up there now, I go with my grandkids to the Civic Center for their outings and to the pool with them and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi Gary, how are you?
Good morning.
How does or has your career and education relate to the parks and rec industry, and specifically in our community?
Well, other than Legion Baseball and active in other groups, but most of it's to deal with veterans and that type of thing. I remember when used to be the fairgrounds years ago, because I was raised right outside the gate on Garfield. So I can remember back when the American Legion built the first ball fields up there many, many years ago. And I always enjoyed going up there. For me, being involved, I like to see the standards that are set held to that high esteem that they are now. I believe that the county has a very good park system, and I don't want to see anything take away from that. I used to go to Gilbert Lodge in 4-H way, way back years ago. I've always enjoyed the parks. And I'm glad we finally got something down in the Kingsley area.
Good, thank you.
Gary, what type of trends or issues within the parks and recreation industry do you see most important impacting our community, and how do you plan to utilize these trends or issues to improve the community?
Well, I guess the biggest thing that got me upset this summer or last spring was the problem with the pool area and things like that. I don't think negative news is really that important in the paper. Those, to me, would be an in-house problem that should be handled in-house and not spread all over the news media, which it seems that that's a big thing to do lately. But I think I could add to the board. I'm not a person that jumps into things without thinking things through first. Being employed by the state for years and years and years and involved with different areas of that, I learned a long time ago, you don't jump into things till you know what's going on, and I don't believe that a lot of those problems at the Civic Center were really that big. It could have been handled a lot easier than they were.
All right, thank you.
Can you name 5 county parks? I'd rather kind of offset that question from my last interview is, which parks have you used, or what parks are you familiar with?
Civic Center, and I've been out to 4-H camp, Civic Center in Kingsley. And other than that, that's probably the only 3 I've been around recently.
Okay.
I haven't been out on the peninsula or any of them places, or Acme or anywhere. I used to do all that when I worked in this county, and sometimes I have lunch on them.
Okay.
But I've only been in those 3 lately, and mainly to go to 4-H camp was to see what was going on in there.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Why do you want to be a Parks and Recreation Commissioner?
Well, I think I could add to it. I've been around the state, working for the state of Michigan for a few years and seen other parks and what they've done. And I don't have a lot of expertise in designing parks or anything like that, but I believe the upkeep of them is a great thing that has to be done and maintained.
Okay, thank you.
What do you feel is the role of a Parks and Rec Commissioner?
The role is to keep the system established, or establish one that gets involved with the community, talks to people, keeps things in the forefront of what they wish the Parks and Recreation Commission could do, try to work to solve problems that they do have.
Thank you.
The Parks and Recreation's mission is we enhance the community and the quality of life through people, parks, and programs. Please explain if this mission is being accomplished and how to improve the efforts.
I believe that that's being accomplished so far. I've had only a little bit of negative thing with the baseball board I was on this past 3 years, but I believe that the Parks Commission should listen to the folks and try to do what the people of the community wish to be done and make everything accessible, such as handicap accessible and things like that for the community, because a lot of people are handicapped these days. think that's a very important thing, that they can go to all those places and be able to utilize them.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any further questions of Gary?
No?
No,
Thanks for coming this morning.
Yep, we appreciate you coming, and did I explain how the process works?
Yes, you did.
Okay. And do you have any questions or statements you'd like to make of us?
Other than seeing Joe in the coffee shop once in a while. I get a lot of feedback from the coffee shops too.
All right.
Of different complaints and different things, and we've been trying to get Mr. Fleece to come so he could buy once, but he doesn't.
There you go.
I don't have any questions, Larry. I appreciate your time from the commissioners and the board, and hopefully look forward to working with the county on the commission.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks for
thanks,
coming.
Gary. We
Thank you,
appreciate you
Gary.
coming in.
Thank you.
We're ahead of schedule.
Nice. Huh?
We're ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a break.
10:15, 10:30.
Okay, EDSC. Well, you want to take care of planning? Or you want to hold?
Oh, I thought we were doing the appointments tomorrow.
Yeah, we got.
All these,
tomorrow.
we're going to do tomorrow?
Yeah.
Well,
We're not
we
gonna
got,
do them
plus
today?
we've got,
We have more interviews for these days?
yeah, we got one for, what's the one for
Just one library tomorrow.
library? Okay. Yeah, we'll just do it tomorrow. I
We'll
think.
do all of them tomorrow? Is that what you want to do?
I think we should, yeah.
All right, okay.
What'd you say, Mike?
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Take 5 minutes?
That's a recess,
Yeah,
huh?
we'll recess for 5 minutes.
representatives in those areas that
We're trying to where buggy, you know, like say, we stopped, picked up you and your wife or you and your hubby, put you in the back seat, and you can go out to supper or something. It's a nice, slow way to travel, and you have a nice conversation.
My name is Peter Elders. I'm applying for the position of Water and Environment Representative on the Economic Development Corporation Board.
Okay, this is the Legislation and Administrative Committee. We're going to ask you a series of questions. It's an informal process. Then we'll make a recommendation to the full board for their meeting at the end of the month for them to make a decision. And then Chris, seated to your left, will be in touch with you after that meeting to tell you the results or appointments of the board. Okay?
Okay.
And then at the end of the interview, we'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions you have or make any statements you wish. And we'll start with Mike.
Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Mike.
Grand Traverse County has approved the restructuring of the EDC board to have more representation from targeted industry, including alternative energy, education, water, and environment, to represent the economic stimulus of the county. What are your thoughts on this restructuring, and how would your background benefit the new structure?
Well, I think the restructuring, as you allude to, for this corporation is probably a good idea, especially with the grand vision emphasis of the past year or two, plus a lot of attention being given to water and the environment up here, as well as agriculture and so forth. As far as what my contribution would be, my background is primarily environmental research, and so I have exposure to environmental contaminants, wildlife management, some water issues, and I sort of think of myself not so much as an economic salesman per se, as a as a person who would have the ability to look at certain types of technical issues and concerns. And I would, like the opportunity to make that contribution with regard to the environmental side of economic development within the county.
Okay, thank you.
The EDC Board has been in operation since 1978 with the purpose of encouraging economic development. What is your opinion as to how successful this has been, and are you aware of the projects the EDC has assisted with?
No, I'm not aware of the projects that the EDC has assisted with. We moved here about 2.5 years ago, and I've been on a learning curve about the area. I was on the Boardman Dams, not formally on the committee, but I attended a lot of the meetings and talked to a lot of people around here, plus the Watershed Center, et cetera, about water-related issues, and I know something about the environmental concerns with regard to brownfield areas, contaminated sites, state, et cetera, et cetera. But I am not really that much knowledgeable about what this board has done in the past.
Okay, thank you.
The EDC has a little over $1 million available to loan industries within our community. Are you open to looking at new approaches for loaning these funds, and how valuable or important is public oversight of these funds?
Oh, the latter part first. I think it's very important to have some public oversight, or at least inform the public what is going on, and I'm certainly open to any logical and reasonable way to appropriate those funds.
Okay, thank you.
How would you solicit views and opinions on the county EDC program?
How would I solicit which kind of opinion?
How would you solicit views? How would you, views and opinions, public opinion?
Public opinion.
Yeah, from time to time.
Well, I think the local newspaper is a good way to perhaps solicit opinions on issues, perhaps on the editorial page or something of that sort. That's probably the most neutral way, rather than just going to one special interest group and saying, let me have your opinions on this, or to another group. They would certainly be involved, I would think. I'm sure there are organizations here that might be very relevant to a particular initiative, and they ought to be involved, but I would think that something broad-based solicitation would also be involved. Perhaps a combination of people that might have specialized knowledge as well as a broad-based input announcement.
Okay.
Who do you view as possible collaborators for using the EDC's funds within our community?
From an environmental perspective or just in general?
From either would be fine.
I'm not familiar with all the other organizations here that might have an interest in some of these funds, and I'm not aware of the bounds on these funds, in other words, the constraints as to what it can be used for. But certainly within those constraints, other organizations that are looking into economic development within the area would be consulted. From an environmental point of view, there's a great number of environmental organizations, if there's an environmental aspect to it. Everything from the Watershed Center to the Northwest Michigan, I forget the exact title of there's an overall group on water issues up here. There's no shortage of organizations in this part of the state that are concerned about environmental and water issues. The Grand Traverse Land Conservancy, et cetera, et cetera. They could be, used as partners, advisors, or whatever you like to call it.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any additional questions, Mr. Alpers? All right. Do you have any questions or statements that you would like to address the board?
Well, yes. Could you tell me how the board actually functions with regard to what does it actually do? What is its mission other than appropriating or finding recipients for a certain amount of money? How are they called into session? They don't have a understanding of that from the information that was provided in the announcement.
Okay, we have Gene Durency with us in the audience. Gene, could you come up and just give him a broad overview of that, please? Did you hear the question all right?
I believe so.
My name is Jean Durenzi. I'm with Grand Traverse County Economic Development Corporation. The EDC meets on a monthly basis. We meet on the second Thursday of every month at 8 a.m. in the commission chambers. We look at job creation, job retention. We work with area industries to help with their growth and economic vitality. And we're looking strategically at a new strategic plan to implement and trying to get the public involved as well. And to be more creative, not more creative, but just try to get our mission out to the public. Does that answer the question?
Oh, that's part of it. There are a certain amount of funds were mentioned that are available at your discretion to recommend. Where do the funds come from?
The funds are basically through the federal government that runs through the state and then comes to us locally. So the funds themselves are not to our discretion. We work with the state, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, to be able to release those funds.
Is this a set amount of funding or does it fluctuate from year to year?
It's called a revolving loan fund, so it will fluctuate from year to year. As the loans are paid off, we'll have more money available or less money depending on the terms of the loans.
This is sort of a revolving pool.
It's a
money
revolving.
comes in, the money goes out.
Correct.
You meet once a month, you said, or twice a month on Thursday?
Once a month, second Thursday of every month.
And I assume you have constant contact with the Board of Commissioners plus other organizations?
We have a representative of the County Board of Commissioners on the EDC.
Okay.
And every loan that we loan out must come to the County Board of Commissioners for approval.
Gives me a pretty good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Thanks, Gene.
Any further questions, or?
No, I think that was the primary question. The secondary question I would have is, I understand that this position of water and environment is sort of a new thing. In other words, the board is expanding, trying to get specialized interests involved. What do you folks envision the role of that person being?
Well, I'd again have to defer that to Gene because the EDC board are the ones that would take direction, or see what direction they were going to go. The Board of Commissioners provide like an oversight of the EDC, but the day-to-day running and so forth is Gene and the board.
Okay.
All right? Well, we appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Chris will be in touch with you at the end of the month as far as the Board of Commissioners' appointments and decisions.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Chris, we'll be reappointing Mr. Rokas?
Well, she was just indicating. That's
No?
he needs there's two targeted areas that need to go on the board, and so Rokas is not reappointing to accommodate that.
All right.
Yeah.
Actually, when the board changed, per the EDC's request last year, we identified 9 different areas of expertise in the community that we wanted to cover. And I think if you look at your page that identifies the current membership of the EDC, we have representation now in manufacturing, technology, health, finance, and agriculture. And as the other as the other positions opened up, we were going to try to get representation in those 5 fields, as well as water, environment, education, and energy. And so, as you see with our applicants today, we've got a couple more of those 3 areas covered. And then once, in 2012, when Mr. Strom's current term has ended, we will try to fill the last vacancy in trying to get the area of expertise covered so that we have representatives of the local economy in each one of those areas.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Hans?
Yes.
We're set for you, and if you'd sit down and give us your name and the board that you're applying for.
Okay. My name is Hans Van Summeren, and I'm applying for the County EDC Board.
Okay, and what we're going to do this morning is we're just going to ask you some questions. It's an informal deal.
Okay.
And this committee here makes a recommendation to the full Board of Commissioners, and at their meeting at the end of the month, they'll make a determination and do the appointments as they see fit. And Chris, seated on your left there, will be in touch with you and tell you the results.
Okay, great.
And then we'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions or make a statement if you want to at the end of the interview.
Okay.
All right? And Mike, we'll start with you.
Okay. Good morning, Hans.
Good morning.
Grand Traverse County has approved the restructuring of the EDC board to have more representation from targeted industry, those being alternative energy, education, and water and environment, to represent the economic stimulus of the county. What are your thoughts on this restructuring, and how would your background benefit the new structure?
Well, personally, my background has been water and education for most of my life, and I came back to Traverse City about 1.5 years ago and took a position with the college. And having been away for so long and come back, I see so much opportunity here with drawing economic activity and businesses towards this region with a hub around the college. I see lots of opportunity that the college has to provide incentives for businesses to be here. And with the Water Studies Institute and with the partnerships we've been developing with university partners and other agencies, I see that gives a strong backbone for businesses that would like to see more of that type of activity. If I go back to my days in Ann Arbor and I look at how many businesses tried to get that Ann Arbor zip code just so they could say they were in Ann Arbor to be associated with the university, I think we have the same opportunity here. I think that we have more resources in terms of our natural environment than they do there, and I think there's a lot to capitalize on. So I think it's a great way to restructure. I think that energy, water, and agriculture and education being tied to all of those really are the next triad of where our new jobs and our new economic growth will be.
Good, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
The EDC board has been in operation since 1978 with the purpose of encouraging economic development. What is your opinion on how successful this has been, and are you aware of some of the projects that the EDC has assisted with?
I don't have a lot of background in what was done prior to getting interested in back in Traverse City and getting interested in being on this board. So I don't have a lot of previous knowledge on that. I do know of some of the changes that I've seen. I don't know which is directly related to the EDC and what was the result of the meeting of that group. So I don't have a lot of background understanding what happened before I came back. And I'm sorry, the second part of your question was?
It was just, are you aware of some of the projects that the EDC has assisted with?
I'm not. I'm not right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Hans, the EDC has a little over $1 million available to loan to industries within our community. Are you open to looking at new approaches to loaning these funds, and how valuable or important is public oversight of these funds?
Oh, I think that's a big piece. Certainly, when I came here was the end of the Boardman River Dams process, and not from the economic side, but from the public perception side. That was a absolutely critical piece to that process happening, and whether or not everyone agreed with it, certainly it was a needed piece. And if we look in the future and we think of offshore wind development or things that involve Great Lakes waters, which we all hold as our own, I think that the public piece is instrumental to making something successful.
Okay, thank you.
All right. How would you solicit views and opinions, public opinion, that type of thing, on the county EDC program and maybe some of the applications that are being processed through your board?
I would think that the best way to get people engaged or to get opinion is through an education process. So making people aware up front of what the alternatives are, and whether that would be holding workshops or informal coffee break sessions, but way to get the public involved in so that they can provide input prior to any decision being made. But I think education is a key piece to that, and so holding workshops would be, in my eyes, a way that we could engage more public comment.
Thank you.
Hans, who do you view as possible collaborators for utilizing the EDC's funds from within our community?
The collaborators meaning like other agencies?
Yes,
or?
to team up with, so to speak, or combine efforts.
Yeah, in terms of promoting water in education, I'm already part of a group that's called the Freshwater Roundtable, and that is a group of all the local nonprofits and water-based or environment-based organizations. And every month we meet and we discuss what our new projects are and where our capacity could be to develop more. One of the things that I'm very excited about that we'll be starting this year is we want to develop an asset map of why high-quality water is such an important piece to our economic growth. We've often around the state or in other parts of the country looked at why degraded water or poor water quality is a interference to economic growth. But we've never looked at it the other way. We have high-quality water here, and let's develop what that asset map is. Let's find out what all our organizations provide towards that to stimulate more economic, to bring more businesses here. So I would think that certainly the groups from the Freshwater Roundtable would be big allies of who I'd want to have support our efforts.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any further questions of Hans?
No, good.
I do. You mentioned in your note to Dennis about the blue economy. Now, is that just the education and research technology partnering together to bring opportunities? Could you expound on that just a little bit for me?
Yeah, if we look at the green economy is where people have been talking about lately in terms of environmentally conscious economy, and looking at it from that side of things as opposed to the dollar side. And what I'm thinking of, the blue economy really is where we're headed. Water is the critical piece of where things are headed in the future. Water is the oil. It's not the next oil, it is oil. Water is more expensive than oil if we buy it from the store. Water is something we all require. We can't make water. We can't, there's no way to overcome the needs of water in any case, shape, or form. So water is going to play a key role in manufacturing, in industry, in business development, the wise use of water, educating people on those practices. So I think that when I say the blue economy, I really think that water is going to be a driver for businesses across the country. How much they use, how they can reduce, why they would go to areas that maybe have good water already, and how can they invoke good business practice to keep it that way. So that would be, I think, very, very important to any new activity, that they recognize the high quality that we have here, and they work to sustain that.
Okay, good, thank you.
All set?
All set.
Do you have any questions for us or statements you'd like to make?
No, I think I'm excited in that I do feel that it's important for us to think about all these areas as we move forward, as we draw new activity here. We have an opportunity in the city and the county to do some amazing things, and the bay, the rivers, the inland lakes, the environment that we live in, and the way people want to work towards it, I think there's opportunity for some exciting businesses to come in here and start to capitalize on that. So I'm excited to be part of that. I'm excited to be back doing that type of activity now. So that's what I would look forward to being part of in the future.
What type of business would you envision coming in here to capitalize on that?
Well, if you look at, certainly as we look at energy and we start thinking of offshore wind technology, we're looking at areas of access to both do maintenance. We're also looking at ways to provide training to the workforce who's going to work in these areas. So if I look at the college and I look at maritime and water studies, we have a strong area already where we could become a training center to bring people in to work in these areas. So it would be, we'd be bringing in dollars in terms of educating people. These jobs are not going to be so locally focused. You're going to be able to live many places but work in one because they're in the middle of the lake. So there's opportunity for people to come and live here, get their education here, make this their home, but yet work in other parts of the Great Lakes. So I see that as being a big piece. And should Michigan and how Michigan decides to leverage their offshore component, that's going to be a big player in what we can do at the college. And we're working on some proposals right now to try and to be a piece of that. So I would see that as being one business that would be extremely strong. Science and technology in terms of our students, both in the high school and the college, we have an ideal test platform in the bays in terms of new technologies. And I would think water quality sensors, buoys that are being more prevalently placed all around the lakes in terms of observations. These are all scientific pieces that they're not big manufacturing firms, but they're small, high technology types of businesses that could do just what they do anywhere else but do it in Traverse City. And I'd like to see if we could bring more of that kind of activity here. It puts more emphasis on the water itself and keeping it high quality while presenting Traverse City as the hub for this type of development and activity for around the Great Lakes.
Well, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, and we appreciate you coming in.
Great, thank you.
And Chris will be in contact with you at the end of the month.
Great, thanks.
And he was the last one on the list, correct, Chris?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Tomorrow, we meet at 7:30 a.m. We have one more additional interview scheduled for 8 o'clock tomorrow. Is there any further business today? I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Support.
Been moved and supported to adjourn. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.